Welcome back, and joining me for a closer look at what's played out on the market scene today is Imtiaz Suliman from Sentio Capital. Thank you so much for your time, Imtiaz. Very interesting day on the JSE, and as much as we saw that huge climb on the resources, the all shares still up by only 0.06%, but very, very heavy gains on the PGM stocks. Talk to me about today's trading session on the JSE.
Yeah, thanks, Anati. I see what happened was that the market opened up quite strongly, and then those gains faded throughout the day. We did see the resource index hold on to that gains, and in particular, the platinum group metals with the likes of Sibanye and Northam all up quite strongly in excess of 10%. The one that did lag was Valterra, and I think the lockup period for Anglo American came to an end today. So maybe the market is expecting that block of Anglo American stake of roughly 19% to come to the market at some stage. But nonetheless, we saw gains also in the gold counters on the back of a higher gold price as well. So, we saw a weaker dollar, and this is the trend of the weakening dollar on the back of attacks on the Fed in the US, and that has continued. We've got the court case with Lisa Cook, who is one of the Fed governors, continuing, and a lot of investors are questioning how much independence the Fed really has and whether that's going to hold for the long term. So that's putting pressure on the dollar, which is good for the likes of commodities, and in particular, platinum and gold.
Well, as we're talking about the biggest gainers on the JSE, the biggest loser today being Bidvest, and that's, of course, on the back of the annual results. Top line and cash generated by operations saw the most growth, up 5% and 6%. But continuing operations, we did have the normalized HEPS there, only rising by 1%, and HEPS actually declining by 3%. We did see, of course, a decline on that stock of over 6% at some point. What story are these numbers telling?
I think it points to a tough macroeconomic environment, especially in South Africa. Bidvest has a number of different divisions, and if you look at the ones that did come under pressure, it was the freight and the branded good products. So if you look at the freight division, maize volumes weren't as strong as in previous years, and that has put pressure on volumes that go through the terminals that Bidvest manages. And then if you look at some of the branded product side, they benefited quite a bit from the renewable cycle that we saw about a year or 2 years ago on the back when we did have load shedding that was quite rife, and that has died down. So that also has put some pressure on that side. If you look at the services side, I think services in South Africa and the international operations did reasonably well. And that's benefiting from tourism and travel into the different regions. So overall, a pretty muted outcome from Bidvest. They do have debt levels that ticked up slightly, not a concern, but it just shows that to generate growth in a low GDP environment is quite tough, and they one of the counters that have to run hard to stand still.
Well, even in an unstable economic environment, a short-term insurer, Santam, seems to be doing well. It released its interim results today. Top and bottom line up by double digits. The company also saying that it exceeded its longer-term targets. An overall pleasing performance?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is the trend that we've seen from most of the short-term insurers, that they've had very good results coming through. And this is on the back of a benign claims environment. We haven't had massive weather-related claims, and pricing has been quite strong. So post-COVID, there was pressure on pricing, whereby a lot of these companies gave payment holidays, parts inflation shot up quite significantly, and it was difficult to put through pricing in that environment. But now they're managing to put through pricing, and the claims environment has been in their favor. So Santam reporting that their overall margin is going to be above their target margin, which shows how strong this underwriting cycle has been relative to the history.
Well, how is RCL Foods doing, of course, in a constrained consumer environment where they also have to do with pricing dynamics, because they released their year-end results and the revenue was only up 1.8%. But quite interestingly, though, the bottom line rising by double digits, saying also that they saw volume pressure across most categories. How did you digest that update?
Yeah, again, it shows and speaks to a consumer that is quite constrained. Some of the internal sort of dynamics that helps them was a turnaround in their bread division, which had much better margins, and overall cost efficiencies, which again shows that companies have to do a lot from their own perspective because your top line is not really growing. If you look at the sugar division, that's one division that did come under pressure. And this is on the back of lower sugar prices from a global perspective. So overall, earnings did grow around 28% on a very muted top line basis. But nonetheless, they've got a strong balance sheet. They are actively looking at potential acquisitions that they could do. But also, we do need a better GDP environment for them to do well from here on.
Well, let's drill into fish while we are talking about food. And actually, unlike RCL Foods, Sea Harvest said that they saw good volume growth across the business. Of course, in its half-year results, showing a strong acceleration in their financial metrics. Is it a good time to be in fishy business?
It seems like fishing often goes through periods of cycles, and this has been a strong cycle for the likes of a Sea Harvest. They did add 2 new vessels to their fleet, which helped with overall volumes, and pricing has been quite strong. So a large part of what they do is hake, and hake pricing has been strong because the competitor to hake is cod, and cod volumes have been under pressure, and that's mainly fished in the northern seas. So Sea Harvest did manage to push through that pricing, and on top of that, they had a very good catch environment in this period. So overall, things seem to have worked out in their favor. They do have a large input cost of fuel to run those big tankers, and again, with fuel prices coming down, that helped with the overall cost. So a strong result from Sea Harvest overall.
Right. After that flurry of results commentary, let's get into your stock pick for today. Imtiaz, what are you choosing?
I'm going with a US listed company called Ulta Beauty. They've got around 1,500 stores in the US, whereby they sell beauty products, some on an exclusive basis, and some that are sold by the competitors as well. But they have a very strong loyalty customer base where 95% of their sales are done by members that hold a loyalty card, which means that you have a high number of repeat customers. And they're seeing strong growth despite the slowdown that we're seeing in the US economy. Again, that's on the back of them upgrading their stores, having new product as part of the offering, and also making sure that the promotions are well received by the customer. So I think Ulta Beauty has a strong balance sheet. They should generate good growth going forward and pay out strong dividends because of the growth that they generate.
On that beauty note, let's wrap up the conversation for today. Imtiaz, really appreciate your time. That was Imtiaz Suliman from Sentio Capital.